Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we are taking a closer look at recent discussions surrounding the future of Iraq's currency value and what current messaging may mean for those who closely follow developments related to the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's broader economic reform efforts. Over the past several days, a growing amount of commentary has circulated suggesting that Iraq may not be in a position to make any significant adjustment to the value of its national currency in the near future. According to these discussions, expectations for any major currency-related developments may need to be pushed further into the future, potentially extending into 2027, rather than occurring during the remainder of 2026. For many observers, this type of information can initially appear discouraging. After all, currency reform has been one of the most closely watched topics among Iraqi dinar followers for many years. Whenever there are reports indicating delays, uncertainty, or additional waiting periods, it is natural for market observers to react with disappointment. However, before drawing conclusions, it is important to step back and examine the situation through the lens of economic fundamentals rather than emotion. One of the most important realities in international finance is that currency valuation decisions are rarely made based on public expectations. Governments and central banks generally focus on economic stability, inflation control, fiscal sustainability, banking sector modernization, foreign reserves, and long-term development goals. These factors often carry far more weight than public speculation or market rumors. When reports emerge suggesting that Iraq may not be prepared for major currency changes this year, it does not automatically indicate weakness. In many cases, policymakers deliberately emphasize caution and stability because maintaining confidence in the financial system is considered a top priority. Sudden changes in expectations can create unnecessary volatility, and governments often seek to avoid sending signals that could encourage excessive speculation. This brings us to an important point regarding the perception of economic news. There are times when official messaging appears conservative, cautious, or even pessimistic. Such communication strategies are not unique to Iraq. Governments around the world frequently choose to manage expectations carefully. By emphasizing challenges rather than potential opportunities, policymakers can reduce the risk of unrealistic assumptions forming within financial markets. For Iraqi dinar followers, this means it is essential to distinguish between messaging and actual economic conditions. Negative headlines do not always reflect the complete picture. Similarly, positive headlines do not always guarantee immediate economic progress. Responsible analysis requires examining both the news itself and the underlying economic data supporting that news. At present, Iraq continues to pursue a number of long-term economic initiatives. The country remains focused on diversifying its economy, improving infrastructure, strengthening financial institutions, expanding non-oil sectors, and attracting foreign investment. These objectives represent major components of Iraq's broader modernization strategy. The banking sector remains particularly important in this discussion. Financial reforms often require substantial preparation before any significant currency-related adjustments can be considered. Modern banking systems, regulatory compliance, digital payment infrastructure, anti-money laundering standards, and international financial integration all contribute to a country's readiness for future monetary reforms. If policymakers believe additional work is needed in these areas, postponing major currency decisions could be viewed as a practical and responsible approach, rather than a negative development. Economic reforms are generally most successful when implemented gradually and supported by strong institutional foundations. Another factor worth considering is the global economic environment. Central banks and governments worldwide continue to navigate changing interest rate conditions, trade patterns, energy markets, and geopolitical developments. These external factors influence policy decisions in virtually every country, including Iraq. Because Iraq remains an important energy producer, fluctuations in global oil prices can significantly affect government revenues, budget planning, and economic forecasts. Stable revenue streams help support public spending, infrastructure projects, and investment initiatives. Therefore, policymakers often monitor international economic conditions closely before implementing major monetary measures. The current discussion suggesting that substantial currency changes may not occur until 2027 should therefore be viewed within this broader context. Delays, if they occur, may simply reflect a preference for completing key reforms before moving forward with additional policy adjustments. For investors and observers, patience is often one of the most difficult aspects of following long-term economic developments. Markets frequently move more slowly than public expectations. Large-scale reforms involving national currencies, financial systems, and economic modernization programs typically unfold over years rather than months. This reality can sometimes create a gap between expectations and outcomes. When expectations become overly aggressive, even neutral news can appear negative. However, from an analytical perspective, a slower timeline does not necessarily invalidate the overall reform process. Instead, it may indicate that authorities are prioritizing sustainability over speed. Another important consideration involves public perception. The news paragraph suggests that upcoming information may appear gloomy, negative, or discouraging. Such language can have a powerful psychological effect on audiences. Financial markets are influenced not only by economic data, but also by sentiment. When sentiment becomes excessively negative, observers sometimes overlook positive developments occurring in the background. Infrastructure investments, regulatory reforms, international partnerships, banking modernization efforts, and private sector growth may continue even while headlines focus on delays or challenges. This is why professional analysts generally evaluate economic progress through a comprehensive framework. Rather than focusing on a single headline, they examine multiple indicators, including GDP growth, government revenue, inflation trends, foreign reserves, banking sector performance, employment conditions, investment flows, and fiscal reforms. Looking specifically at Iraq, the country possesses several long-term strengths that continue to attract attention from economists and international institutions. Iraq has substantial natural resources, a strategic geographic position, a growing population, and significant opportunities for infrastructure development. These factors contribute to the country's long-term economic potential. At the same time, Iraq also faces challenges. Economic diversification remains an ongoing priority. Strengthening institutions, improving administrative efficiency, expanding private sector activity, and continuing financial reforms require sustained effort. These realities help explain why policymakers often adopt cautious timelines when discussing major economic initiatives. For followers of the Iraqi dinar, the key takeaway is that economic progress should not be measured solely by expectations regarding currency value adjustments. Broader indicators of economic health often provide a more accurate picture of long-term developments. In the short term, reports suggesting that no major currency changes are expected during the remainder of 2026 could reduce speculative enthusiasm. Some observers may interpret such reports as disappointing, particularly if they were anticipating faster developments. Market sentiment may become more cautious as a result. However, a reduction in speculation can sometimes create a healthier environment for long-term planning. Excessive speculation often leads to unrealistic expectations and emotional decision-making. By contrast, a focus on economic fundamentals encourages more balanced analysis. Over the medium term, attention is likely to remain focused on reform implementation. Investors, analysts, and international organizations will continue monitoring Iraq's progress in areas such as banking modernization, fiscal management, infrastructure development, and private sector expansion. These factors are often more important than short-term speculation because they influence the structural strength of the economy. Sustainable economic growth generally depends on institutions, productivity, investment, and financial stability, rather than rapid policy changes. Looking further ahead toward 2027 and beyond, the discussion becomes more complex. No one can predict future policy decisions with certainty. Economic conditions can change, government priorities can evolve, and external developments can influence timelines. For this reason, responsible analysis avoids presenting assumptions as facts. Instead of focusing on specific predictions, it may be more useful to monitor measurable indicators of progress. Improvements in financial infrastructure, stronger banking systems, increased foreign investment, enhanced economic diversification, and continued institutional reforms could all contribute to a stronger economic foundation over time. Another lesson from today's discussion involves the importance of evaluating information carefully. The news suggests that upcoming reports may appear misleading or discouraging. Whenever financial news generates strong emotional reactions, it becomes especially important to verify information through credible sources and examine the broader context. Sensational headlines often attract attention, but serious economic analysis requires patience and discipline. Responsible observers understand that economic reforms rarely follow a perfectly straight path. Progress can include advances, delays, adjustments, and revisions along the way. For Iraqi citizens, businesses, and international observers alike, the ultimate objective remains economic stability and sustainable growth. Currency policy represents only one component of that larger picture. A strong economy depends on multiple interconnected factors working together effectively. As we continue following developments in Iraq, attention should remain focused on tangible indicators of reform rather than speculation alone. The country's economic future will be shaped by decisions involving investment, infrastructure, governance, financial modernization, and private sector development. Whether major currency-related developments occur sooner or later than expected, these underlying reforms will likely play a critical role in determining Iraq's long-term economic trajectory. That is why professional analysts consistently emphasize fundamentals over rumors and data over emotion. At this stage, the most balanced interpretation of the current discussion is that expectations may need to remain measured. Reports suggesting that significant currency changes are unlikely during the remainder of 2026 do not automatically imply failure, nor do they guarantee future outcomes. Rather, they represent one perspective on the current state of Iraq's economic and monetary reform process. The coming months will provide additional information as policymakers continue implementing reforms and responding to both domestic and international economic conditions. Until then, careful observation, responsible analysis, and attention to verified facts remain the most effective approach for anyone following Iraqi dinar developments. Thank you for watching today's update. If you appreciate responsible, factual, and balanced coverage of Iraqi dinar news and Iraq's economy, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. As always, this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, or trading advice. Always conduct your own research and consult qualified financial professionals before making any financial decisions.